Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be continuing my Miraculous Ladybug series by making Rena Rouge, owner of the Fox Miraculous. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. This Clawdeen wolf doll has the perfect face mold for Rena Rouge. But I think the Ever After High body is much more suited to match Alia's buxom figure, so I'll be swapping heads with this ginger Breadhouse. I start by cutting off all her hair. Then I use some boiling hot water to soften up the vinyl of her head. This makes it easier to remove. Rena won't be needing these wolf ears, so I'm going to cut them off and save them for later. I try to keep all the doll body parts that I don't use, because you'll never know when they come in handy. Now I go into the neck hole with some pliers to pull out all of the plugs and glue from the inside of the head. To pull off Ginger's head, I'm going to be using a hairdryer to heat up the vinyl instead of hot water, since I won't be cutting off her hair. I discovered that the hot air sort of melts her hair a little though, so I don't recommend this method if you care about the integrity of your doll's original hair. I love these Ever After High hands, but I don't think they fit this doll, or match my other Miraculous customs. I opt to use Clawdeen's hands instead because I think a fox should have claws, and I want to save these hands for a more delicate character. I cut off the barbs on the neck peg to make the head easier to remove and put back on. Time to remove the factory face-up with 100% acetone. Clawdeen's face was harder to remove than any other doll I've done. The glitters in her eyeshadow were really stubborn and kept moving around and appearing again when I thought I'd finally gotten all of them. Now I'm using 2-part epoxy clay to sculpt some new features onto her body. Alia has a pretty ample bosom, and I love that element of her design. I think it kind of resembles some big fluffy fur that a fox would have on its chest. And I don't have any of this footage, but I also sculpted the shoe shape onto her feet. While I wait for the clay to dry, I use some leftover epoxy clay and this wooden dowel to make her flute. The next day I'm able to sand down the clay and give it a smooth finish. I also sanded down the rest of her body to prep it for painting. I sketched guidelines for her supersuit directly onto the body. Now on to the tricky part, which is adding her coattail. I use this tape method to make a pattern, and I draw the edge all the way around the waist so it'll fit her body. I lay the tape down on a piece of paper so I can refine the pattern. Then I cut it out and double check to make sure it fits. wasn't entirely sure what to use to make her tail. I've seen people use fabric and foam, but it often adds an unfitting texture or rigidity, and I wanted this tail to be flexible and blend seamlessly with the rest of her suit. I thought a plastic bag kind of material like Ziploc would be great for this, but then I found this lanyard pass thing that I felt was a much better thickness for the project. I taped the tail into place before using super glue to attach it permanently to her body. Around this time is also when I shaved down the area around the arm joint to keep paint from rubbing off of the shoulder. Unfortunately, I lost some more footage, but you can kind of see here that I used more epoxy clay to sculpt the front of her coat and fill the small gap to blend the tail into the rest of her body. Now to start painting. I used thin layers of watered down acrylic paint to keep brush strokes from showing. And I make sure to avoid painting directly on the joints. If you smudge any of the edges, you can use an X-Acto knife to scrape off any little mistakes and make your lines super clean and sharp. When I'm done with her black gloves and boots, I move on to her white belly. I don't know what's wrong with the orange paint I was using, but it was super transparent. No matter how thick I made it or how many layers I added, you could still see this streaky brown color underneath. So I ended up dabbing on paint using a sponge because it built up the color much faster. This meant I had to go over the lines a little, but luckily I had sealed the doll after the white paint, so I could actually scrape off the orange layer with minimal damage to the paint underneath. After reapplying some paint and cleaning up my edges, I sealed the doll again with some Rust-Oleum clear coat and started layering pastels onto the joints. The black parts went fairly quickly, but building up white pastels on the thighs took many layers of sealant. If you use this method, keep in mind that pastel likes to blend into the color underneath, so light colored pastels tend to be very subtle and disappear after you spray sealant onto it. After all that work, I still get some chipping on the knee joints, so I cover up any bald spot with Sharpie to make my life easier. This is when I realized I completely forgot to make Rena's fox ears, so I quickly made them with some Apoxie Sculpt and let them dry before I painted them and the rest of her accessories. I stick her head on my mannequin doll and cover it with 2 layers of plastic wrap to protect it while I make her wig. After using a pen to mark where her hair parts, I take a hot glue gun and start gluing chunks of hair directly to the plastic. now that she looks like a troll doll, I can color her hair with Sharpies to make it a fiery red. To make an easy ponytail, you can take a few chunks of yarn and tie them together tight with a rubber band. Then brush it all out with a cat brush to make it smooth and remove all the excess fiber. I make 5 of these small chunks and then tie them all together at different lengths to make Rena's huge ponytail. I colored the roots with more Sharpie, then attach it to the back of her head. I then pull back the rest of her hair to cover up the base and blend it in. Using a flat iron, I heat up the metal handle of my X-Acto knife and use that to curl the chunks of hair into Rena's hairstyle. After the hair is curled, I take some scissors and cut it into shape. And when I'm done, I use a strong hairspray to set it in place. So just like my Ladybug video, I lost most of the footage for the face-up, and I only have this small chunk to show you guys. Since you don't get to see most of it, I'll go over how I do the face-up process. First, I do a light sketch to place the mask and eyes, and then I add pastels on top for blushing. After a layer of MSC to protect the blush, I paint it on the mask. One thing I forgot to mention was how I used Testors acrylic paint for the mask instead of the Liquitex paint I was using for the body. It's a more liquid formula, so it went on smoothly without any brush strokes, and it's way more pigmented, so I think I'll be using this kind of stuff from now on. When the mask was finished, I started placing colors on the eyes and defining and darkening the lines. This is where I start to add some details, such as creases to indicate her eyelids, her mouth, eyelashes, and pupils, as well as highlights above her mask and on her nose and lips. I continue building up color with pencils until I'm happy with how it looks, and I use a little bit of black pastel to shade around the top of her eyes. For the whites of her eyes, I use this General's Pastel Chalk Pencil, since most white watercolor pencils aren't very effective at adding color. Now to attach her flute to her back, I had the idea to use a clear elastic to hold it in place. I glue it into a shape that will support this little bulb part, and attach it to her back with a little super glue. I add eye shines with white acrylic paint and a dotting tool, and then cover the whole eye with some glossy varnish. I didn't bother to gloss her lips because I think Alia looks much better with her lips matte. At the last minute, I remembered to attach her fox charm to the front of her suit. Just like Ladybug, I glue on her wig with Elmer's Glue All and hold it down with some rubber bands. Once it's dried, I straighten out her hair and then stab her ears into her head. Now she's all put together and it looks like we're finally done. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm planning to get the Queen Bee video out to you as quickly as I can, so hopefully I'll see you soon.